All right, welcome back, everybody, on Zoom and otherwise. We're going to continue today with the Parsha. I'm sorry, the not the Parsha. I'm not talking about this week's Parsha by any stretch. It's Parsha's Truma. If you want to look, go ask your local Orthodox rabbi. Um, Continuing the Maamar called Nasiv Malka, which means I choose the king. And we're picking back up on section 5. Um, so I just want to rerun the last part of section 4 just to like refresh and pick back up where we left off. So we're talking about the mushal, the analogy, the analogy of there's a king. Why not? Like there's always a king, and the king is Hashem, and he has these officers, and he comes to town with these officers, and the people think to themselves like if I want to get anything done, I'm gonna buddy up with the officers because they actually do things. They're in charge of the money. They're in charge of like the military. They're in charge of the food. They're whatever the case may be. So they're gonna attach themselves to them and essentially use bribes and try to bribe them into getting to do what they want, right? But the Rebbe states that if you're clever, then you'll choose the king. The one who says I will choose the king, which is the name of the mimer, he's actually very clever. But this begs a question, like, well, obviously the king is the better choice. Like, what makes this guy so clever, right? What is the merit in choosing the king at all? And in part 4, he talks about, or in part 3, part 4, the idea of a free choice. What's really free choice? Is it really free choice, right? Because it's like if you have two options that are equal in all matters, and you just choose one arbitrarily, then that is free choice. But if you choose one because there is a quantifiable difference, a quantitative difference, that's not exactly free choice. It's called a no-brainer, right? You don't have to like think about that so hard. You are just naturally drawn to um, pick that. It's kind of like a flavor. If you have a favorite flavor of ice cream, choosing one or the other is not uh, it is not free choice. So that's kind of where we left off, and where he also okay yeah. So also a very huge word that the Rebbe shared here was the idea of bittul. So bittul means nullification, and the problem with I guess like the benefit which is a problem about serving the or bribing the officers is that by them you don't actually have to do anything but pay them money, right? Like that's really all they are interested in is money, or they're like in this case, in the case of avodah zarah, like their ritual practices or whatever. But by the king, like you actually have to serve the king, right? So this is why people turn to um, serving the officers anyway, like to begin with, is because they don't have to do anything. Um, and to explain this, to explain why this works at all, why it, like, some people do succeed in getting what they want through these means. And the Rebbe quotes the Zohar saying, a spirit of impurity is continuously found where there is no cost and there is emptiness. As it is written, we ate in Egypt without charge, which implies that from the nether side, the other side, like the dark side, if you will, just whatever, whatever you want to call it, is provided without cost. So, if you find yourself in a situation where, you're right, you may not be doing the right thing. All right, you may not be doing the right thing. Let's just say like you're a Jew, and you get roped into some kind of avodah zarah, and these avodah zarahniks are telling you like, oh, if you worship this guy, if you come to church with us, you'll be successful in your business or whatever. Like, I don't know what kind of pitch oh, you'll go to heaven, whatever. And then, you know what? What if you actually do? Like, what if that actually happens? Does that mean it's real? The Rebbe says no, because these things, like these forces, remember, because everything in the world, everything in existence derives its life force from Hashem, from God, and nothing can exist without God. So, what about these like dark forces, so to speak? Yeah, they also come from Hashem. Hashem created them on purpose, but they come from a field of Hashem's. It's still his radiance. It's still his like creation, but it's called Makif. And Makif is like it's like an encompassing light. It's like all around, and this is why you can benefit from these kinds of avodah zarah, because the energy that they tap into is readily available all the time and without charge. Like you don't have to actually work for this. And so the Rebbe concludes this. I'm just going to read the last paragraph because it just kind of ties it all together, and so we can continue to the next thing. It says, on the basis, we can appreciate the unique positive quality and cleverness of the Jewish people who serve the Holy One, blessed be He, to receive influence from the realm of holiness. Service service and labor is required. Moreover, initially, the influence is measured, meted out in a manner commensurate to the divine service performed. Nevertheless, for the sake of serving God alone, the Jews are willing to forego the abundant material influence that could be received. For even the Jewish people can temporarily receive influence from the other side. Indeed, when doing so, they receive the first and choicest portion. Nevertheless, they are willing to forego this because they cherish more the limited holy influence that they receive from the realm of holiness. Meaning, yeah, you see like people who are rich and famous, right? And this is more applicable today because these are the kinds of avodah zarahs that we deal with. You know, people do worship money. People do worship, beauty or like vanity ideas of fame. Like these aren't like real idols, right? It's not like a statue or anything, but you can make up an avodah zarah in your mind, right? And you can attach to an idea in your mind, and this could be like anything at all. And the Jewish people say, okay, fine, maybe you do get rich and famous, maybe you do get all this, but because this goes against Torah, because this goes against the king's will, which is the Torah, uh, they're willing to forego that immediate gratification. And this literally is a mushal for like anything in your life. But that's basically where the Rebbe left off. So let's continue into section 5. Okay, it says the rationale the Midrash gives as to why the clever person chooses the king and not his officers is that the others are all subject to replacement, while the king is not subject to replacement. On the surface, it can be explained that the Midrash's intent is that the influence comes from the Sitra Achra. Even that's the other side, the dark side, the other side. Even though it is more abundant than the influence that comes from holiness. Again, so like even though you see people being successful in their avodah zarah, that doesn't mean anything. Continues, Rebbe says, it's merely temporary. It's something that will not endure, which is true, because if you want to, fill, it's like filling a cup with a hole in the bottom, and you keep filling it and filling it and filling it, and you don't know why it's not remaining full, right? And this is how our minds and hearts operate, our desires operate. As soon as one of our desires is fulfilled, right? Like we want the next thing. This is why even millionaires, people who are millionaires, they're also still worried about money. You look at them and you're like, wow, wouldn't it be nice to like not worry about money? I mean, it would, right? Wouldn't it be nice to not work like paycheck to paycheck? But I mean, really, if you think about it, these guys are just as worried about money as you are, because if anything happens, if anything, they're more worried about it because they have a lot more to lose, right? Like if you're already poor, or like you're already like middle ground, middle class, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you don't have so much far to go. But if you're a millionaire and you make a mistake, or you slip up, or you stop paying attention to your money, it could all go away. And that's provided it's honestly earned money. Like that's not even to mention borrowing so much money that you're able to, um, you're able to get these things, these like material items. You can buy everything on credit. But that's not real wealth. That's just like borrowed, and you're just like kind of hedging your bets here and there and playing the stock market and whatever. Yeah, you really might get rich, but Reb is coming to tell you like that because that is not coming from the side of holiness. It is inherently limited and temporary, and you can't rely on that at all. You can't just say like, that's my, parnasa. You can't say that. At least not in the on the side of the Sitra Achar, on the dark side. Okay, he continues. For after the task of refinement is completed, and the sparks of godliness that fell into the klipa, this is crazy, guys. I'm so sorry. Man, I am having second thoughts about this mimer. Anyway, the said there. Okay, for after the task of the refinement is completed, and the sparks of godliness that fell into the klipa, and from which klipa derives its vitality, are refined and elevated, the klipa will be nullified entirely. Certainly, this applies with regard to the Jewish people, for even in the present era, a Jew can only receive vitality from the nether side temporarily. That's literally what I just said, guys. That's literally what I just said about the cup business with the hole. Like, I'm not going to go into this. I'm not qualified to go into this. Just, if you get it, you get it. If you don't, ask your local Orthodox rabbi. All right, Rebbe continues. The converse is also true. The fact that the influence from holiness is measured and limited is only true in the present era. Catch that. Catch that. Ultimately, after the source of the inward influence is revealed, its source being the inner dimension of the encompassing light, which is Makif, which is where the Avodah Zarah comes from, the influence granted to the side of holiness will be far greater than the abundance that stems from the external dimension of the encompassing light, from which the klipas can also derive nurture. In this vein, our sages state, if this is what those who transgress God's will receive, certainly those who fulfill his will receive even greater benefit. So this is kind of a mind game that we have to play with ourselves, that upon looking at the material world, we might come to certain conclusions that, we especially, by Noachides, it's especially difficult because your laws are so broad, right? And you guys really need a Gemara. Like, you need some kind of legal text. I mean, I guess you can use a Gemara, but, what does it mean stealing? Like, what does it mean eating from a live animal? What does it mean adultery? What is all the, like in practice, what does it mean? And like every legal system has this idea of like, yeah, you have the general law, but that's just in theory. Like, the real life has more facets, like more things than just, it's not so simple. Nothing is so simple in real life. So you can't just say like, here's the law and figure it out. So it's especially hard by Noachides because you don't have like these very specific mandates that are just like, just do that and then you're fine. Okay. Continuing, this explanation, however, is not sufficient, for from it naturally follows that the clever person's choice of the king would also be because of the influence he will receive. Which, okay, fine, like, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense, right? Like, okay, what makes this guy different? The only difference is he figured out that, serving the king would bring a better reward. So it's like he's the same as the other guys. He's just looking for the reward. So what does he say? The difference between him and those who choose the other officers, the duke and the like, is that they merely look at the present situation while the clever person thinks about the future. As our sages say, who is a wise man? One who sees what will be. Thus, according to this explanation, There is no fundamental difference between the two. However, the fact that the Midrash states that Jews solely serve the Holy One, blessed be He, because God is my portion, says my soul, indicates that the clever person's choice of the king is not because of the benefit he will derive, but solely because of the king. The reason the Jews choose God, even though at present abundant influence is granted to those who violate his will, is not because of the calculation that afterwards those who fulfill his will receive even greater measure of influence. Rather, their choice is motivated by the fact that the influence granted to those who fulfill his will is given from the inner dimensions of his will. It is his true desire. The influence given to those who violate his will, by contrast, is given like one who throws something over his shoulder to his enemy against his will. Therefore, the Jews desire that the influence that is given to those who fulfill his will, because even though it is lesser, it emanates from his inner will and his desire. This is crazy, y'all. Like I'm not sure y'all like understand how crazy this is, but it's like off the chain. Um, wow, because the Torah the Torah is Hashem's infinite will. It is his innermost will. And it's like when there's a line in one of the songs that we sing for Shabbat, Lecha Dodi. And if you know Lecha Dodi, you know there's a line in there. It says Sof Maaseh Machshavat Tchila. And if you're in Rabbi Silverberg's class, you know a little bit about where I'm going with this, with the Aron Kodesh. Sorry, I wasn't going to talk about the Parsha, but here it is. Too bad. So the Aron Kodesh was like the first thing that's made, but it's like on the innermost part. And Rabbi Silverberg very cleverly explained, as the commentaries explain, that the reason this is like this, right? The reason they built the Aron Kodesh first, the Ark of the Covenant, is because that's the whole reason for the whole Mishkan, the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert. That's what we're reading about right now. And in a similar way, because the tabernacle is like a microcosm of the universe, and man is a microcosm of the universe, then the Mishkan and man, well, man is I don't know which is a microcosm of which. Maybe they're like both of each other. But it's like you see like that. That's also, it also is the last thing mentioned in the parsha. It's mentioned also at the end. This is crazy, guys. I'm sorry. Like I'm not like so. I'm not like there. So like mankind was created on the sixth day, which is the last day. And this is kind of like, the last thing is like the purpose, right, for the whole thing you're doing. So mankind is the purpose of creation because he was created last. But the an extra, like, I guess, proof or a support to that idea is that when Hashem spoke everything into existence, he spoke it. But when he created mankind, he blew the breath of life into man, into Adam Arishon. And the common, like, I'm sure you've heard this like other places, is very common to say, but like when you're speaking, you can speak for a long time, you can go on, but when you exhale, you can only exhale for a short amount of time. And why is that? Is because it's coming from like a deeper place, right? And so just like this, the life of mankind, the life that we receive every day when we wake up, when Hashem recreates the world every minute, every second, every millisecond, is coming from his innermost will. So the cleverness, quote unquote cleverness of the Jews is that they understand that connecting to that part of the universe is actually the most like geschmack thing you could do. Like that is actually way better than all this other stuff that people are doing, you know. And the Rebbe is like going to admit to you, like, yes, you can look out into the world and see people like violating Hashem's will and just doing all sorts of meshugas, and you're like, why are they, why do the wicked prosper? Like, why do evil people get away with stuff? And like, why do wars happen? Why do because the way the world works is like these forces of klipa can still derive their nurture, as the Rebbe explains, can derive their nurture from this side of the Sitra Achra, from Makif, which is just there. It's just there by virtue of the world being created. It's not like God is like, oh, I'm gonna like kill a bunch of innocent children. No, it's just like the world is like this, and because it's like this, that as such, this happens. This is a very kind of a natural thing, and in order for, I guess, like physics to happen and for the world to exist, this also kind of has to exist. It's kind of like a necessity, um, and if you really really like get into it, it's also a theological necessity. Like just within the religion of Judaism and how like we think about God, it would be very problematic to think that God only delivered kindness to us, because we don't see that. That doesn't actually explain what we live in real life. We have to take real life and then say like, Hashem, this is what Hashem is doing. Like whatever we're seeing in real life, that's Hashem. It's like not another thing. Okay, continuing. Sorry for the rant. How much do we have? Not so much. Okay. Um, all right. One might ask, if the clever person's choice of the king is because of his desire to bond with him, why does the Midrash offer the rationale that all others are subject to replacement? In resolution, the intent of the statement is the fact that they are all subject to replacement indicates that even at present, while they are in power, they do not represent true existence. In the analogy, the fact that the fact that the stars and constellations possess vitality that enables them to convey life energy to the animals and to the nations of the world is not because of their own inherent power, but because they derive vitality from the realm of holiness. Now, since the vitality that comes from holiness within them does not become one with them, on the contrary, it is in exile with them, their inherent state is one of death. The same applies to those who receive their vitality from them. As explained in Tanya, let's see, where in Tanya? Chapter 7, okay, you'll look it up if you want. Chapter 19 too. The wicked are referred to as dead because their vitality stems from a place of death and impurity. This is just going even further, like with that idea that these opposite sides, the other side, the wicked side, if you will, it derives its life from death, from the energy of death, or rather the because God is the only infinite thing. Hashem is the only thing that transcends physicality. So if you start if you start involving yourself with forces that are not infinite, it's like back to the cup thing. It's like, okay, your vessel, just the way it's built, it has a hole in the bottom. So the only way to fill it and have it continuously filled is with an infinite source of flow, and that's Hashem. That's it, and that's like the cleverness of the Jew. All right, last paragraph here. On this basis, we can understand the clever man's statement: "I will choose the king because all the others are subject to replacement." He does not desire the influence that is drawn down from the place of death and impurity, even though it is abundant. Instead, he desires influence from the realm of holiness, even though it is limited in nature, for he desires to receive from the king himself. So this is why it's really free choice. you know, and if you're converting, you understand, like, or you're a convert, you understand why it's like really free choice. Because a lot of times, like especially when you're starting out and you're starting to like separate from your non-Jewish friends, you're like, why, what gives? Like, why can't I hang out over here, or like why can't I go to this thing, and you start making all these like calculations in your head, like, ah, well, it's not really problematic because of this, and it's like, well, technically, like all that, and then next thing you know, you're eating a ham and cheese sandwich, and it's like, why is that, why does that happen? And it's because these the thoughts the thoughts that into your head, um, regarding like attaching to something else besides Hashem, or even your own, right, like even yourself, like even your own thoughts, ideas, desires, whatever. All that is limited in nature, and or rather opposite. It's abundant. It's ready. It's readily available. It's in the world. You can access it, right? You can have fun, like you, if it's so bad, right? Like you could also tell yourself that. You could say, well, if it's so bad, why do I enjoy it so much? Like like I went, right? Not me. I'm not telling a story. Like hypothetically, like let's say I went to, on Shabbos, like I broke Shabbos, Chas v'Shalom, to go like watch a concert or something. You know what? I would enjoy. I would enjoy the concert. Like it's not like I wouldn't, right? It's not like I'm gonna die. Not literally. But that's not the point. Like that, you know what I mean? Like you're not. We're not doing it because we're just trying to avoid punishment or receive reward. No, like we're the first ones to tell you that the apparent like revealed reward is much more limited, um, just by virtue of keeping mitzvahs. Like in the Torah, like just right off the bat, the most obvious thing, the almost obvious restriction that people know about Jews is that they keep kosher. And I mean, for me, like I'm a food lover, so I love all food, and I'm very happy with my diet. I don't feel like I'm missing out so much on non-kosher food, but like I used to enjoy other things that aren't kosher. Even so much so that I remember getting sick. I got like food poisoning from oysters, and I kept eating them. Like I didn't care. Like, and this is even after I got sick. Um, like that doesn't make sense. Usually, if something makes you like violently ill, you just abstain from that thing. No, I was just so into the taste or whatever, like the novelty of eating it. Um, let's see, how much time do I have? How do I find out how much time I have? Let me pause this. Resume. No, it doesn't tell me. Okay. Any questions, y'all? So far, I'm gonna share it again. Any ideas, thoughts, complaints? I don't know how much more time I have. Okay, let's just go because it'll give me a 10-minute warning. Um, all right, going on to section six. Let's see how long this is. We can finish it. I don't know. I don't know anything. I just work here. All right. Further explanation is necessary, for it appears that the clever person's choice of the king is an intellectual decision. Okay, again, like what's the difference between the other guys? The other guys just made their own intellectual decision. All right. This applies even according to the explanation that he is not choosing the king because of his desire for personal benefit, but because of his realization of the king's eminence. This realization motivates him to forego the abundant influence that comes from the intermediaries. Thus, the clever person's choice of the king appears to stem from his understanding. He realizes that since all the others are subject to replacement, while the king is not subject to replacement, it is befitting to forego the abundant influence conveyed by the officers and choose the limited influence that comes from the king himself. Nevertheless, from the fact that the Midrash associates the clever person's choice of the king with the verse, God is my portion, says my soul, it appears that the Jews' choice of God stems from their souls, because their souls are an actual part of God from above. That is a pasuk from the Tanya, which is a pasuk from Job. It's a verse from Eov, from Job, who is not Jewish, by the way. So you got it, y'all. Um, so what does that mean? This is like what this is a. It's called Chelek Elokam Mamal, mamash, like literally piece of a part of God from above. And this has a lot of like this is so crazy because if you're paying attention, if you're a good Noachite or a good Yid, like you'll see this and it'll be like, what do you mean a part of God? Like You can't have a part of God. You can't have a part of infinite. Like, what is this abstract math? Like, okay, now you have like more than one kind of infinity. Like, what? Don't just take it. Just take it as it is, and I can't explain that right now. Um, so okay, so it appears the Jews' choice of God stems from their souls, which thus seek to cleave to their source because of an innate spiritual desire that transcends intellect. So it's just the nature of the Jew's soul that allows them or causes them to have this desire uh, to cleave to Hashem, because it's actually the same thing. And if you ever there's this is actually really interesting. I learned, like, not in like Torah or whatever, but I remember in high school. I remember this very specifically, learning about this in biology, that water has a very unique property of cohesion, and it'll like stick to each other. It prefers to be together than not. And if you ever like spill something, right, on a carpet, or I don't know, whatever, you spill something, what do? You don't just go with a dry paper towel. You wet it. You, like, make it damp. Why? Because when it's damp, the water will the spill will like soak up into it a lot easier. And why is that? Because water desires to be with itself. Like, so to speak, like, obviously you and I know, like, water doesn't have desires. It's not that. It's just the nature of the thing. That's what the Rebbe is saying. Is like, there's no. It's not like a choice. I mean, yeah, it is, because at the end of the day, we have to choose to get up in the morning and daven and do our mitzvahs and whatever. But it's not like it transcends intellect. It transcends intellect altogether, because what's causing it is actually something that's built into the Jew. Like, it's just the nature of a Jew. All right, so the Rebbe continues. Thus, there is an apparent contradiction. If the choice comes from the soul's inherent godly nature, how is it connected with the wisdom of the clever person? And if the choice is motivated by logic, what connection does it have to the soul's innate desire for godliness? Ooh, guys, this is so good. Like, this is getting so good, guys. The core of the resolution is that, as it exists on its own, mortal logic compels a person to desire his own personal benefit. That is the reason why the nations of the world chose the officers, even though they can also understand that the king is of fundamental importance. Oh, that's crazy. After all, the rationale, all the others are subject to replacement, while the king is not subject to replacement, is a logical imperative. Seemingly, they should also comprehend it. Nevertheless, ooh, okay, 10-minute warning. Let's go. I'll stop at like a minute. Okay. Um, Nevertheless, since their fundamental nature is characterized by yeshus, a self-concern, they do not want to forego the benefit they will receive from the officers. Their fundamental self-concern prevents them from internalizing the awareness of the truth of God's prominence. Meaning, the whole fact that they're even concerned about deriving a benefit from anything for their own sake, it disables the others from even choosing Hashem, even choosing the king, even with all the proofs and all the logic and all the rationale and all the intellectualization. None of that. Why? Because their whole purpose to begin with was yeshus, was self concern, self benefit. They asked, like, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That's all they wanted. So they even if they knew that the king was the right choice, the very fact that the king said, but you have to give up these benefits, they're like, no, I'm good. And sure enough, this is what we learn in the Midrash. Like, this is what we learn in the Midrash, that before Hashem went to the Jewish people and gave them the Torah, he went to the other nations, namely Esav, Edom, and Ishmael. And when he went to these nations, he went to Edom, he went to Esav, and he said, "Do you want the Torah?" And they're like, "Well, it depends. Like, what's in it, right?" And he said, well, you can't kill, you can't murder." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean? what do you mean you can't murder? Like that's what we do. Well, like we don't want any part of that. Like we're Edom, right? So he's like, okay, fine. So he goes to Ishmael, and this is obviously a very controversial thing to say, but I don't care because this is Torah. This is just this is our Masorah. This is our tradition. Um, so he says to Ishmael, like, okay, do you want the Torah? Ishmael says no, or no. They do say no, but like they say, what's in it? And Hashem says, oh, well, you can't steal. And Ishmael says, what do you mean you can't steal? Like, that's how we make our parnasa. Like, that's how we make our living. Like, that's what we do. We steal things. And, yeah, and so they're like, no, we don't want any part of that. But he comes to the Jewish people, and what do they say? As we just read this in the Torah portion. They say, Nasiv and Ishma. Right? We will do it, and then we'll understand. So they not even understand. That's like a bad translation. Shema, like, Nishma is like we will hear it. So it's like they don't even need to hear it to do it. They're just like, we'll do it and then we'll listen. Like just the fact that you Hashem are you are revealing yourself, like whatever it is, like we don't even care about you telling us to do it. Like we're just gonna do it. Like even before that, they don't even want to hear it. They're just like whatever it is, Hashem. Like we just want to be with you, and that's the fundamental difference between these two sides. All right, this is the last paragraph, and I think this is a good place to stop. Okay. Conversely, the reason that Jews feel compelled to forego the benefit they could receive from the officers and instead rise above their self-concern and choose godliness is because of their souls. Because their souls are a part of God. Thus, their choice of God is an essential choice that transcends logic and reason. For their choice is not motivated by their awareness of God's eminence. They're not like it's not because they're some like huge Talmud Chacham, just like crazy, Steigers. Like no, like they're just like, Pasha to Yids. Like they're just Jews. Like that's how they're made, right? That i.e. right that the king is not subject to replacement, not because of that. They don't care about that, but rather by his essence. Nevertheless, their essential bond with God affects their thinking processes as well, causing their minds to realize that since God is true being, that he is alive and exists everlastingly, i.e., that the king is not subject to replacement, they should forego their own self-concern and choose godliness. Oh, guys, I can't believe we're zocher to read this Geschmack Maamar right now. Like this is so delicious. Like oh, this is like so great right now. I just want to like cut this out, frame it, put it on my wall, just like look at it all the time. This is so good. This is only section 6, guys. I don't even know how he's gonna follow this up. I don't. I can't wait till like next week, honestly. Does anyone have any questions about this? Any comments? This is heavy stuff. Okay. Wow. Just like I'm just soaking this all in right now. Okay, just to recap, the Jewish people, they are choosing. The reason it's choice. The cold contradiction is like, well, then it can't be free choice if they're not choosing. Then it's not a choice. It's like it is. Why? Because there's the whole the intellectuality is a result of the soul wanting to attach itself back to its source. Naturally, that's the way it naturally is. That part is not a choice, but because they, just like anything else, just like back to the ice cream analogy, you didn't choose to like chocolate ice cream. You didn't choose that. You were born that way. And so, because of that, your desire, your innate desire that already exists, independent of anything or anyone, it's just how you're born. Because of that, that affects your choice, right? That does affect, at the end of the day, your choice. Um, and so, when you do go to choose the ice cream, it is a choice. You know what I mean? It kind of it's beyond intellect because the reason you want to choose it is not it's not so rational because like the Rebbe explained, if you did use rationality, you could also argue like, well, then you're not going to get benefit. Like, why would I get benefit, right? Okay, so that we do have 3 more minutes. Last call for questions or comments or whatever, and then I'm gonna head out. Okay, shkoyach y'all. I'll see you next week. Bezrat Hashem, and good Shabbos.